Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, The Long Tilts, How to Build, Nurture, and Mature a Better Content Marketing Strategy. Just before we get started, we'd like to take a minute for you to tell us where you're watching from. So if you could type in the question box your location. And going forward, if you have any questions during today's session, please feel free to type them out in the question box, and then Mitch will answer them at the end of the session. Oh, I see we have a few people calling in from beautiful BC, Ottawa, Alberta. Hello, Montreal.
Yay,
Halifax.
Montreal.
We're going coast to coast here. Oh, a few more from Alberta and Quebec, Calgary. Ontario. Hi, everyone. If you're having technical issues, feel free to dial in to hear the audio. Wonderful. We got some more Vancouver and Halifax. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to you now, Mitch.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Jess. Hey, everybody. I'm supposed to introduce myself, but why don't we do this? Just go ahead, Google Mitch Joel or 6pixels.com. You can read my bio while I go through this, and we can just get on with the show. I used to run a fairly large marketing agency. I write a lot. I podcast a lot. And I'm just really happy to be here with everybody from Intuit and speak to you about your businesses and how to think about content marketing. I've got a lot of fun things to share with you, but first, round of applause for Jess and everybody who made it. Thanks for showing up. This is what happens now. You can't get on stage, so you have all these fun toys to play with, and we're going to play with them. I promise you that. There will be a lot of playing. It's going to be fun. I hope you stick around. So let's talk about content. For the vast majority of people, I would argue that this is what their content feels like. It's what I call digital tumbleweeds and virtual crickets. We put out stuff and it just doesn't get the attention that we want it to get. And I can tell you that whether it's your content that's like it, fine, but it's my content that's like that too, often. And it's easy to get into the mindset of this has been a complete failure and this isn't working for us and we should stop doing it and we should move forward. But I believe that the real brand struggle that we face is in how we think about things. Now, I use the term brand. I know that you're business owners, you might be entrepreneurs. So I won't refer to you as business owners because I know you are, but I'm going to refer to the business as the brand. You represent the brand. And the brand struggle to me seems fairly clear. It's that right now, everything that we see is like this squirrel. We're just chasing after shiny, bright objects. We think we know what we're doing. We think we know what we like, but then something comes along. It could be Instagram, it could be Shopify, it could be Facebook, it could be TikTok, and all of us get extremely distracted. We believe that we have to chase down all these new platforms and be present on all of them. And this is a really big challenge for brands. So I'm here to tell you, stop the madness. Don't chase the shiny, bright object. Let's talk about how to really build something powerful. Let's talk about how to really build a center of excellence around your content and around the people that you engage with, because that's very important. And by the way, before we get started, if you can't hear me or there's a struggle, again, feel free to hop in the chat. Jess will let you know if it's you, me, her, us. It's the internet, stuff happens. So I just wanted to remind everybody to feel free to let us know if there's an issue. So if we're not chasing these shiny, bright objects, what is the strategy? I would argue that we have to look away from this idea of what platform are we on and what are we creating on the platform and start thinking about what is the overall brand experience? What is my experience that I want to push forward out into the world? How am I going to show up every day? Putting aside this idea of advertising and thinking about really the content we can create. And you might be thinking, well, I have a small business or I'm located very regionally. I don't think any of that matters. I think if COVID-19 proved anything, besides the fact that someone like me could go from 150,000 miles a year up there to doing this, It proved that every single business that wasn't digitally connected should have been. And every business, small, medium, large, regional, national, provincial, whatever, needed to be ready. And so now what's happening is we have a lot of businesses that reacted in a positive way, a lot of businesses that retracted, but the vast majority that really did this push things forward. I'm very close friends with Harley Finkelstein, who is one of the co-founders of Shopify. And he likens this moment to everybody was sitting in the ocean on their surfboards and this wave came. And there are certain businesses that were ready to get onto that wave and go positive or negative. There were others that got pummeled by the wave and there were others who were just already used to it and knew what to do in these situations. And so I really want you to think about content in the sense of what kind of brand experience are you creating? And the truth is, when it comes to thinking about building out content marketing and thinking about how to engage influencers, we actually kind of know what works. And it won't surprise you, but there is a reality. So right now, we know that things that are image based, photos, videos, those tend to get more traction than things that are created in text or audio. We'll talk about that because obviously audio has become immensely popular. We know that it has to be what I will call mobile first, meaning that it has to really be effective for somebody as soon as they glance at their iPhone, their Android device, their tablet. And we also know that it has to be what I call social by nature. So people think that social by nature is social media, and it's not. It just means that whatever you're creating has the hooks built into it that make it social by nature. So what is that? One is it's a clear message, obviously. One is it's easy to share. And then the third one is that it's easy to talk about. So social by nature is very important. So if you're thinking, well, what works? It has to be that. I would say that is a formula for current popularity, but it's not necessary in terms of thinking about it overall. This might be perfect for you. It might not be, and you'll see where I get to on that. So before we start, I always tell people there is a golden rule. And the golden rule is fairly simple. It's this: do as I say, not as I do. Because you'll see a lot of the things that work for me will not work for you. And a lot of things that your competition is doing will not work for you. So don't be panicked about it. It's very common and it's very, very normal. Now, whether you know me or not, what I'd like to do is very quickly walk you through my content lineup. I am not showing you this to show off. I am not showing this to you to brag. I just want to give you some optics into what happens when an individual within a business makes a decision. Clear? Good. So this is my content lineup. I have a blog. The blog is called 6 Pixels of Separation. I started in 2003. Not a typo. That's actually when I started it. So I'm looking at 18 years, 18 years that I've been writing almost daily on this. Now, 6 Pixels of Separation started off as the Twist Image podcast. Twist Image was the name of my agency that I then sold to a large conglomerate called WPP. That agency still exists today. It's called Mirum, but this was Twist Image. And so we had 6 Pixels of Separation, the Twist Image blog by me, Mitch Joel. And that was something I was publishing at the time, literally every single day, 7 days a week, 7 days a week. It's shifted since then, but that's how it started. Shortly after, 3 years ago, I started a podcast, 2006. So we're looking at 15 years of doing that. It is the longest running business podcast consistently in the world today. It's a weekly show, long form, about an hour long, where I interview thought leaders. Could be somebody who wrote a business book, could be a famous industry leader, that type of vibe. Now, I started that podcast because I got tired of typing 7 days a week and decided on Sunday it would just be easier to talk. Little did I know the podcasting would become the beast that it's become, but that was my strategy. But now suddenly, Twist Image, the name of my agency, was managing a couple of things. It was managing this blog, it was managing this podcast. All of that we grouped into what we call 6 Pixels of Separation. So we had the agency Twist Image that we were marketing and branding. We had 6 Pixels of Separation, this content thing. We had myself, which you'll hear about a little bit because I started using the popularity of this to build more recognition in the space. Prior to the agency, I was also a journalist. So one of the strategies we deployed was that I would become a contributor as much as possible to the industry trade publications. So I'm no longer in the marketing agency business, but this gives you an idea of the type of stuff we were doing. We'd be speaking to the top industry publications and offering ideas for articles. And so in this case, you're seeing we are talking about the shift away from stuff. This idea that we're now more engrossed in buying digital and streaming subscription services rather than buying things. And you can see that's from about 4 years ago. From there, things did take off and things got popular. And I got a call from the local radio station here in Montreal. Hi to all the other people here from Quebec and Montreal. Bonjour, salut. And I appear every Monday at 7:10 on Shom FM, which is the big rock station, talking about technology and social media and all this sort of stuff. That worked so well that they brought me over to the AM talk radio station where I do a little hit on Monday as well. And now that's actually led to me speaking out in Victoria. So hello, people from Victoria, if you're here on Jack 103, which is every Tuesday morning. So now I have also a weekly radio hit that's happening. And then for fun, because I'm not busy enough, I actually decided to do a passion project, which is Groove the No Trouble podcast, where I'm slowly trying to build the largest oral history of electric bass players. Every month, I have a long form conversation with a bass player because I'm a nerd like that. And that's another one of my assets. From there, I'll still contribute when I can to other magazines and publishers. I've published and wrote 2 books that I'm super passionate about and sit here wondering why it's going to take me another couple of years to write another one because the last one came out probably 7 or 8 years ago. Um, and then prior to doing a lot of virtual events, I'm also a professional speaker. And so I travel all over the world 50 to 60 times a year talking about the intersection of brands, consumers, and technology. And the whole point here, again, isn't to show off. It's to set up for you how we slowly built over 15, 16, 17 years this platform that has created a lot of attention and a lot of energy. And people ask me if it's worth it. And my answer is always the same. I'm here. I get invited by Intuit. I get invited by Intuit Canada to come here and speak to you. So it has worked. And now that I'm not in the agency business, I'm still a speaker. I create media. I'm an investor, advisor, working on a startup. So all of those things. So how did I get here and how can you get here? I think there are 7 really easy steps to help you define that content marketing center of excellence. So I'm going to walk you through them really quickly. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or the question section. I'm going to be happy to chat with you and spend some time with you after for sure. So let's go. Number 1 is the tactic. So what are you truly trying to accomplish? Now you might think, well, we're talking about content and content marketing, but there's a million other things you could do, right? I mean, content is definitely one of them. You could definitely do that, but you could also start thinking about doing more advertising, doing more word of mouth, doing more networking, and on and on and on. So the question becomes, why do content? And I mean that, write down why content. Start asking yourself why you should do it. For me, it was very, very easy answer. Sales was giving me anxiety. Like walking down the streets of Montreal and banging on doors and asking people if they needed a website or a social media campaign or if we could build out their newsletter wasn't my thing. And my thing was, as I alluded to earlier, in the late 80s, when I first started professionally, I was a journalist and I published print magazines before there was an internet. I know I don't look that old, but bear with me. And I had a passion for creating content, for creating communications, and for creating media. And when people say to me, how do I figure out what I should do? Or how do I figure out what resonates with me? My answer is don't ask someone else. Go and read this book, which is Simon Sinek. He wrote this book called Start With Why. And if you don't want to read the book, that's fine. You could just go and watch his TED Talk, which is fantastic. So, first is making that decision. Do you want to commit to the path of content marketing? The next thing you should do, which runs very anachromatic to what a lot of people think, is you need to figure out your format. And people might think, well, shouldn't I nail down my story first or my brand? Why would you do the format first? I think choosing the format of the type of content you're going to execute on is really important. And the formats are actually pretty straightforward. They just look like this. You either have the ability to create text, you have the ability to create images, you have the ability to create audio, and you have the ability to create video. And what I mean by choose, I want you to think about it in the construct of what would you be most comfortable with? What makes the most sense for you? What could you be passionate about? A lot of people think, well, I'm going to blog or I'm going to write articles, and they realize they hate writing. Don't do it. Even if it's popular, don't do it just because you think other people are doing it. Again, you have to find what works for you, which, as you're going to see, it runs different to that first part around it being image-based, mobile, social. Well, mobile social should always stick, but the image-based one. The next thing you got to figure out is, are you better off with long form or short form? So long form could be writing an article. Short form could be Twitter. Long form could be building out multiple videos. Short form could be you're going to do it on TikTok or Instagram. So you can also choose which format against the length. And I think it's important for everybody to define their formula. So what's worked for me is background in journalism, text. I also did a lot of college radio, and I had the podcast and started that and fell in love. So it's audio too. And I would argue that I prefer also long form. My preference is to write articles or have a long form conversation and publish that as a podcast. Does that mean that I don't do a quick 2-minute hit on in Victoria, BC every Tuesday with Heather B? I do that. Does that mean that I don't post pictures on Instagram? I do that. Does that mean I don't tweet? I tweet. But what my preference is, what my anchor is, how I define myself by is text and audio in a long form. That is where I feel I'm getting the most traction with my content. That is what I feel has led to things like speaker bureaus wanting to have me, uh, book deals coming into play, being paid to write content in other ways, being paid to appear in the media, and on and on and on. Now, you might be thinking, that's terrifying. That's not my goal. That's fine. You can still create content without the result of it being that people are sucking your time to do all this other stuff besides focusing on your business. It is true. I had business partners. It was a great way to make rain. It was a great way to shake trees, and it was a great way to get attention. Instead of pitching our business one to one, I would be able to get up on a stage, share my thoughts with 130 people, and then be able to get clients to work with at the agency. Now it's a bit of a different model, but that was a strategy when we were running our small business. The next thing I want to talk about is the frequency. And frequency is an interesting perspective. And here's what I mean by that. Some people believe, well, I'll just write something and publish it whenever I want. I don't believe that that is a good idea, and I would not recommend that. And the best example I can give is prior to the internet, I was a magazine nerd, newspaper nerd too, but a big magazine nerd. And I loved all the magazines. At the time, there was Fast Company, there was Business 2.0, there was Wired, some of them still exist, a lot of music magazines. I read through a bunch of them from Circus and Hip Parade to Rolling Stone, you name it. And what happened is, over time, there was no internet. I would read and reread some of the magazines multiple times cover to cover. And every week I would go to the magazine store. I got to know when the magazine was coming out. I could tell, oh, there's another week until the new issue comes out. I even knew when I traveled to the States that the magazines came out a week earlier, and I used to get super excited when I had a trip to the US because I'd get those magazines earlier. So when you think about how do you publish, I want you to set up that schedule. Human beings love frequency. We love consistency. People say, oh, I love change. I'm a change agent. If every morning I snuck into your place and moved your coffee maker around, by the fourth day, you'd want to have me murdered. First of all, I shouldn't be sneaking your place, but you get the analogy. Okay? So we don't want that. We want that consistency. We want to feel, I know when it's coming out. And for me, I had my own system and it worked quite well. My system was that I would be blogging 3 to 4 times a week. It still is this. And I would podcast once a week. And again, there's other stuff that happens. But the way that I would set it up would be on a calendar. And so my next recommendation for you is to set a calendar, build an editorial calendar. When I started publishing magazines, again, prior to the internet, the first job, every single new issue was to build the skeleton. We would build out exactly what is in there, what's on page one, what's on page two, all that sort of stuff. And we do that now with an editorial calendar. So for example, I know Sunday morning is when I publish the podcast, 6 Pixels Separation. Monday is when I do Showm FM, which is posted on my blog Monday morning after that's done. Tuesday is my 2-minute tech hit, which I do with Jack 103 out in Vancouver. Saturday, I have a 6-link thing that I do. So it's me aggregating links with 2 other friends, and we each share 1 link with one another, which makes it 6 links. I call it 6 links worthy of your attention. Very original. but that's been running for over 10 years too. And so I know in my brain that we've got Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then I know there's places to play on the other days, but I keep the time very specific so that if people are used to seeing me in the morning, which is my schedule, they see me in the morning. And then I want to also make sure that you don't fall into the trap. And this is a great cartoon by my friend Tom Fishburne, right? We're creating more content than our audience can actually consume. That's a great topic for our next blog post or white paper, infographic list. You could go crazy with this stuff, and I will talk a little bit about that soon, but you also want to be focused. There's a tendency to just keep going and going, but there's a logic in having a real plan and scheduling it and really knowing where you want to go and what you want to do next. Now, if you're not sure what type of content to create, I want to introduce you to something very, very powerful. In fact, I would argue this has been the most powerful exercise I've ever done for myself. And it has been the most powerful exercise I've done with individuals, solopreneurs, small, medium, and even massive organizations. It will look simplistic to you, but I am telling you that it is very hard to deliver on, and often it's very hard to think about. So, this is what I call the triangle of attention. And the triangle of attention is our way to better understand what type of content should we create. Now, the anchors I want you to look at are the points of the triangle. And I'm going to show you right now what my triangle of attention is, what I am trying to create attention from others who consume my content. Now, you might think this is not legendary, Mitch, but I think it's important. I've decided that my focus for my content should be on brands, it should include technology, and it should include consumers. And it should include how they work together. So this is how it sounds. Um, any piece of content that I create will be how brands are using technology to better connect to their consumers. Or any piece of content that I'm trying to create is about a technology that's had an impact on brands and how it impacts their consumers. Follow me? Or I'm going to write about consumers and how a certain technology has impacted a brand. Now, again, not evolutionary or revolutionary, but it allows me to have a complete line of focus. I will not write content that doesn't hit at least one, hopefully two, 5 on 5, 10 on 10, three. I want to aim for the three, but often it will just be on one or two of those issues. So I want you to go back, look at the triangle. It's now empty. It's right there for you, and figure out what are the three domains that you could build authority around. So again, mine are brands, consumers, and technology. Do they have to be original and unique? I will get to that. But before we move forward, we need to have a hard stop. If you're not sure where things stand, one is I recommend that you check out this book by Mark Levy called Accidental Genius. It's a fantastic book that allows you to really think about new ideas in a rapid way, how to make lists, how to get things done. It's very, very profound. But nothing happens with the triangle unless you also have what I call the bullseye. And you need the bullseye for this to be efficient. And what the bullseye does, it allows you to create a true area of focus. So, focus. We have brands, consumers, and technology. But the truth is that I won't do any of those unless it has a hard center around innovation. Now, it used to be marketing when I was at the agency, but when I left, I decided I want to expand. I didn't want to just be the marketing guy. Because of my experience with technology, I wanted to focus more on innovation. So you even heard me say it earlier. My area of expertise is helping people decode the future. And I do this by helping them understand the intersection of brands, consumers, and technology and where the opportunities are to innovate. So when you hear that, you probably think, well, that's making more sense. That's more focused. So what is your bullseye? Your bullseye will be whatever industry you're in. You could choose those three areas and have it be focused on pharmaceutical space. You could have it focused on accounting. You could have it focused on name your industry. It could be that you might want it to be something different but associated to your industry as well. So this is a critical exercise. Every conversation that I'm going to book, every opportunity to come and speak to a group, I think about, does it fit in that area? We have to do this because we're mirrored in videos and stuff like that. Does it fit in that area? Does it truly work? And then what's important is for us to think about how we want to show up. What do we want our voice to be? And this is just an image, but it gives you an idea of where you might want to go. And for me, it became very clear very early on that I wanted to occupy this space. I wanted to be talking more about building trust and acceptance, having optimism, having a sense of anticipation, of interest, of curiosity. To me, that was the voice that I wanted to use in all of the creation of my content. Now, you can definitely choose to be angry. There's a lot of people who've become quite well known being that agitated voice within the industry. I don't not recommend it. You just have to choose the path and stick to it, which isn't easy for everybody. So now that we've talked about how do you hone in on that, how do you use this exercise in a powerful way, I want to talk about what comes next once you have that content out. So what happens a lot of time in the digital tumbleweeds and virtual crickets is we put the content out and nothing happens. You are not just responsible for being a content creator, but you are also the promoter. You are also the marketer of this content. The content can market itself, but often it requires you to do it. And my favorite example of this is James Altucher. James is a well-known person in the content space. He's actually a stand-up comedy now. I don't know if you saw this, but when COVID first happened, there was this whole story about New York City never coming back. That's because James wrote an article about it, and believe it or not, Jerry Seinfeld responded to it, and it became this New York Times or New York Post op-ed, and it got national attention, and it jettisoned him into more fame and popularity, but he already had that. I've known James for a long time, and when he talks about what he does to make his content move, he would argue that for every 1 hour of content creation work he puts in, he puts 5 hours of effort into promoting it. Now, that's not 5 hours of one day sitting down and toiling, it's over time. So you might take an article and share it somewhere else or whatever it might be. But the truth is, we have to also not just create our content and publish it, but we really have to promote it in order for it to work. And so you have to look for different avenues that might be more efficient for you to do this. I know for me, one of my greatest thrills is when I get a call from a journalist to come on and talk about something that's happened. I'll give you a very recent example. I've been very interested in social audio for a long time, and now we're seeing the emergence of this platform called Clubhouse. You know what Clubhouse is? Go ahead and Google it. It's the next TikTok. And just by writing about it and commenting on it, it's created a lot of media attention. I do radio appearances, I get quoted in the press. That creates more attention back to my platform. That allows me to add subscribers, and the cycle of life continues. It's the way it works all the time, always. I would even argue, and again, this is do as I say, not as I do, because I should be doing more of this, but advertising works. And I'm sure you know this in general, just being business people. So if advertising works, the smart question to ask ourselves is, should we advertise the content that we're creating? Now, that may not seem like an illogical thought to you, but you might be thinking, well, if I'm going to advertise, why would I advertise in a way that drives people to my business? And I would argue that there's a longer opportunity to engage people in a very, very different way if you can just be smart about it. And I'll show you some examples of this. So this is one from a couple years ago, and I just haven't changed because I like it so much. But I'm going through my Facebook feed and I come across this article on how you could use these online courses to unlock your hidden literary talents. I'm somebody who's written 2 books. I'm interested in literature. I'm interested in business writing. I'm interested in copywriting. And the article was from the San Francisco Gate, as you can see. And it says, start your freelance copywriting and become a digital nomad. Again, all things I've talked about and have a certain domain of authority in. And I thought, wow, San Francisco Gate. I mean, this is a reputable publication as well. And then if you'll see right under where it says SF Gate with Stack Commerce, you'll see that it's sponsored. That's an ad, but it's brilliant. It's content, it's valuable. And so I have a friend who happens to run one of the largest online music learning sites. It happens to be for bass, called Scott's Bass Lessons. And if you do any search for, I mean, he's really good at his retargeting. His company's 30 plus people. They have almost 30,000 students studying with them. Any piece of content that's retargeted back to you is usually a fascinating documentary. It's not about signing up for his courses. It's not about a free trial. It's none of that. He's just giving value. And that's the real story of content marketing. If you do it strategically, even if you're advertising against it, you can do it in a way where you're creating a tremendous level of value. So, in the promotion department of this, don't forget about the opportunity to definitely think about advertising as well. So, the next thing I want to talk about within this is the ability to think about a content distribution strategy. Now, those are three very big words. They can be confusing, but the truth is, a lot of us create content and it's what I would call one and done. We posted it, maybe we tweeted about it, maybe we shared it, but it's done. I don't believe that is the best opportunity. Now, this applies to text, images, audio, video, but I'm going to show it to you based off of, again, my content strategy because it's easiest because it's mine and I know why I did it. So I'm going to show you what a good content marketing content distribution strategy can look like. And I will also caveat this by saying, when you see this example of how I did something, some people might argue that's not good for search engine optimization. You need to be careful about that. And the truth is, maybe. But my idea isn't to necessarily always be optimizing for search engines. My idea is to get my thought into as many eyeballs as possible. So I had published this blog post. I'm going to go back to full slide so you can see. And I published it a while ago. This is actually in 2018. And I'm showing you this because this is one piece of content that I did spread far and wide. And again, it was the one thing about content that nobody really talks about. So that was one idea to it. And I posted it on my blog as I normally do with my subscribers and my newsletter and all that good stuff. But then I also took and I posted it on Medium, where I have my own profile and I have thousands of followers as well. Because there it can get picked up by magazines within Medium, which is a publishing platform. It's almost like a blog publishing magazine online type of vibe, but it gets a lot of attention. And so I published literally the exact same article on Medium. The one thing that I do differently here is that I always leave a byline at the bottom or the top saying that this article originally appeared and I link back to the blog. Because search engines might look for the same words and then penalize you, but if there's a link back to the original, it's less inclined to do so. So I published it on Medium, and then I hopped over to my LinkedIn profile. By the way, LinkedIn is becoming very, very powerful for your content marketing. I do not want to downplay the value of what you can do with LinkedIn, so be very smart and wise with it. It can be quite incredible to get your ideas to go forward. And I published it on LinkedIn. Same thing on Facebook. On Facebook, I happen to have a personal page and I have a public page. And usually I'll share it on both. And again, a lot of people might be seeing this and thinking, don't people hate you? I mean, if they follow you, they're connected to you on LinkedIn, they're connected to you on Facebook. Do they like that? And the surprising answer in the years that I've been doing this is I don't think one person has ever said, why do you publish that everywhere? And it's concerning to me, but it also makes sense. At any moment in time, I don't even know how many browsers you have open right now. We are looking at a lot of things. And you might be somebody who likes looking at your stuff on LinkedIn and spend very little time on Facebook. You might be somebody who just likes the inbox and not any form of social media. And I've discovered that as consistent as I thought my audience is, it's actually not. They're making choices at any given moment in time about where they want to be. So it's a thought to be not annoying, but understand that you may be providing a service. You may be showing up where they want you versus it being a scenario where you're trying to get them to come to you. And I'd even take these articles and publish them in places like the Huffington Post and in other business publications. This one's a bit trickier. You have to get an account, they have to want to have you there, but it is possible to do. Now, over the years, things have changed quite a bit. The world used to be what I would call a hub and spoke model. The hub was your website. It's your blog. It's your podcast. It's ownable. It's yours. If the world collapses and something's not popular, if we switch from a MySpace to a Facebook or a Meerkat to a Vine to a TikTok or an Instagram to a Clubhouse, I still have my list. I still have my website. I still have my hub. And we used to consider the spokes of the wheel to be social media, that you would go on to places like Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and say, hey, check out this great article I wrote about content marketing over there on my blog. So I'm showing you things a bit in reverse because I put the article there on LinkedIn. I've put it on my blog, and my thinking and those who are getting better at content have understood this idea that we no longer live in this hub and spoke world, but rather it's a hub and hub world, meaning you need to build hubs or outposts in all of the social channels that make sense to you, that work for you. That doesn't mean all of them. Again, don't don't be the squirrel chasing after the shiny bright object, but it does mean you need to figure out where might it be best for you to be. I would even say if you were doing things your way, not my way, again, do as I say, not as I do, that you might be inclined to take something out of that blog post that I wrote and and maybe turn it into more of a bullet point list or more paragraph or less paragraphs rather for LinkedIn and make it just a blurb thing. And if people think it's really interesting, you could link to it or add to it later on. So now again, if you're doing text, images, audio, video, short form, long form, you have your triangle of attention. Now start thinking about where do you want to build your hubs? What works for you? What's congruous with your business? What's congruous with how you think as a business owner? How do you make this best work for you? I know one of the questions that the people at Intuit asked me to talk about was also working with influencers. In fact, we discussed maybe having a whole session just on influencers. And to me, the simplicity of influencers is it's twofold. One, you can make it really easy for yourself. Just pay them and they'll talk about you. Do I think that that has a massive impact? It can, but I would bucket that in the advertising world. You're paying someone to be your voice, essentially. What could you do is if you're creating valuable content, or you can partner with an influencer who really likes what you're doing so they'll create the powerful content. That to me is a more effective and efficient content marketing strategy. So again, the advertising side you can do. Pay someone, they'll say what you want them to say. Is that going to build long-term trust? We could have a conversation. I'm happy to have it in the Q&A after. So I would think about it more in if you're not the person to create the content and you're looking at influencers to do this, really try and hone in on a few that make sense, that fit your brand, and that can really tell your story in a great way. I mean, yes, it was an ad, but look at what's happened just now with Bruce Springsteen and Jeep. Great ad, maybe one of the cooler ads I've seen in a long time. But unfortunately, I don't know if timing, it's a little weird, but Bruce Springsteen was now just charged with all these DUIs from back in November, allegedly, or something. And Jeep pulled that ad. So working with an influencer also has a lot of downside if you're not really sure and who can be in the world that's so crazy. So I would also say build a list. My joke here is I was a stupid moron, don't be a Mitch. I did not build a list till much later on in my career. And it wasn't being foolhardy. I was just busy. I was creating content. I was building a successful business. I didn't really need it. And again, like everything else, usually when you need it, it's not too late, but you got to start moving really quickly. Because when you build a list efficiently, you can do amazing things like my friend Ann Handley. And if you're interested in writing, is probably one of the best teachers of writing. She's probably one of the best teachers of content marketing. I'm pretty good. She's also really good. She works at Marketing Profs, and she has a very big following because she typically deals in the B2B of content marketing. And she decided, and she had a large following on multiple platforms, that she was going to go more inward. And every 2 weeks, she publishes her free newsletter, Total Anarchy. You have to sign up for it, but again, it is free to sign up. And it's an amazing journey through the world of how to create content, how to think about positioning, and how to think about writing. And she's built up a really incredible list of people who follow her. Now it's changed. She's not publishing every day. She's only publishing every 2 weeks, but she built that credibility and she has the list and she has the power behind it. The seventh point, I think is our last one, is the adjustment bureau. I call it the adjustment bureau because what you're trying to figure out here is how did it do? This is the analytics and this is the data behind it. You really want to understand what worked and what didn't. Did the text do as well as the audio? Did one episode work better than the other? Was it the guest? Was it the topic? What was it? Why did it work? Where did it work best if you're putting it in multiple places? How about the headlines? Did I test things out? Could I have said things in another way that would have made things a little bit better? With the images, with the visuals that are attached to it, good. We talk about even creating on YouTube, and it's so important to have that thumbnail, that video picture that's going to capture your attention as soon as you hop onto YouTube and somebody sees that. Was there follow up? Did I talk about it enough? Did I follow up with that content? Did I give it a chance to to, you open up a bottle of wine, you let it breathe. Did I let the content breathe? Did I give it the chance to do that? And those are the analytics that are important to me. People will say, well, how many people did it? And how many people shared it? Those are vanity metrics. You could be in a room like we are now with 138 people. And if 5 people wanted to connect with me after, that might be a better ROI for me than if 100,000 people saw me and thought, not for me. So these are the metrics I'm really looking for in terms of success. These may not satiate your boss. And if you're the boss and you're the business owner, they may not be the ones you want to hear from the people who are helping out in your marketing PR, but they're valuable. Because when you know what works in content and you do it well, you can push it forward. And the model of content isn't advertising. You drop something and you hope there's a big reaction. The model of content is very much driven by Seth Godin, who's a very famous marketing communications writer. He's great. You should follow him daily, writes amazing stuff. But he talks about it as drip, drip, drip. You're slowly dripping out little things and hoping it creates this puddle and these ripples and that massive ocean over time. And that's really where you have things. You have the tactics, right? You have your text, images, audio, video, long form, short form. You have, you have your form. Sorry, you have the tactic. Are you going to do content marketing? What is it going to look like? The format, text, images, audio, video. You have the frequency. When are you going to do it? How often are you going to do it? Your triangle of attention, right? Your 3 points: brands, consumers, technology. What's your bullseye? It used to be marketing. Now mine's innovation. How are you going to promote and talk about it? And then how are you going to measure the success and what it looks like? Now you might be saying, well, you talked about brands, consumers, and technology. It's not all that original. Should we be trying to be original? I think originality is overrated. People aren't necessarily looking for original. What I think people are truly looking for in great content is your perspective on it. So it may not be original. You might go brands, consumers, technology. That's not original, but it's my perspective on it, my take, the way I deliver it, that people get animated because of. Now, it's true. In a perfect world, you'd want this type of continuum where on the left, you're building something so unique. And it is true, if you go back to 2003, that there were very few people who were publishing like this in the sense of brands and consumers and technology, that intersection around marketing, especially on a blog or a podcast. You can imagine how long ago this was. It was very, very unique. And what happens is over time, more and more people come in and start trying to do that. And more people have come in and have competed with me or probably competing with you. But what happens over time is you may not be the only one or one of few, but you build a unique voice within that. And so while there may be a million podcasts, and there's only one that has my unique voice attached to it. And I'm the one who's been putting the time and effort into building it out and pushing it forward. Now, when we talked about the frequency, there's also something called the pulse. Because what I want you to also do in this moment is really figure out what's the pulse of your audience. Do they want that thing every Sunday for an hour to listen to a podcast? Do they want that thing on Monday with the radio? Now, that answer may lie in your analytics, it might lie in conversations, but you have to also figure out not just your frequency, but what's the pulse of the audience. And it's a give and take. What do they want? What's the comfort level of that? And when you do that, you will truly have this unique fingerprint. It's something that is uniquely you and different in the construct of all the other people who are also trying to create content. So a couple of little final thoughts, and we can go into Q&A. One is niche rules. People think, it's local, it's small, it's just doesn't, I don't know. Niche rules. If we've learned anything about the internet, is that digging deep into a niche will really open up an discernible market that will astound you. So I've alluded to my passion for music. You might see my record awards and music stuff there. Got some basses and guitars. And again, I do this podcast for bass players. And I came across this bass player whose name is Davey504. I'm going to show you Davey504's webpage now. This is his YouTube channel. This is not a joke. Check out these numbers. Under his name, Davey504, he's got 9 million subscribers. And then look at the right of how many views he has. He started this in 2011. Is that a billion? I don't even know what that is. That number's ridiculous. And my point is you probably never heard of Davey504. And if you don't like bass or YouTube humor, you probably never heard of them. But you can go very, very deep on a niche and discover that within that there are maybe hundreds of thousands or millions of followers who might be interested in exactly what you're talking about. And it's a question of taste. If you find something interesting enough to share or talk about it, odds are there's somebody else out there in your industry, in your world, who does too. So it's important. I'd also encourage you to repurpose content. This is my friend Laura Gassner Otting, LGO. and she had a book called Limitless, and she would take components of the book and share them in Instagram. And on the right, you can even see in the post, she would write articles about within the post about what she was talking about. So taking images she's used elsewhere, parts of the book she's used elsewhere, and repurposing it. Sometimes you'll see a lot of times on Instagram, you see them where they're like self quotes. Now, I'm not a fan of self quotes, but it is a good way to repurpose content. I could take a clip of my podcast with a special guest and create that as an image with a little sound wave going through it and share that on Facebook. So I could create media around the media I've already created. As you build a legacy, I've got for over 7,000 pieces of content since I started in the early 2000s. I can go back, I can update. So I do an article every year about how to podcast. Now imagine where we are in this day and age where podcasting became a really big media channel. And so whenever I publish that and update it, it gets shared, it gets talked about. I'm repurposing content that I already had in a new and different way. I'd also say, unfortunately or fortunately, you have to be somewhat shameless, but I'll beg of you to have shame. I'm Canadian. So I really struggle with self promotion. I struggle with a lot of the stuff we're talking about today. And I try to do it in a way that fits with my values. And so I'm always doing the what would. And I have an archetype of an individual who does this exceptionally well. And I always ask my brain, what would they do? Would they do this? Would they not do this? Would they accept this? Would they not? So find somebody whose content you really respect. They don't even have to be in your industry. And before you do something with anything, ask yourself, what would they do? Now, on top of that, I would also say, what makes content great? For me, I believe that this is the ultimate question. You have to be able to look at whatever it is you're creating and say, would somebody actually pay for this? I believe that that may be the strongest filter of content creation that you can have with integrity. Would somebody pay for this? Is this thing good enough that someone would pay for it? Now, it may not be an Instagram post, it may not be a YouTube video. Look at it channel wide. Channel wide, is this something somebody would pay for? This is a very long road. Drip, drip, drip. It is an open road. You will create many things that will be virtual tumbleweeds and digital crickets, or digital tumbleweeds and virtual crickets. But you have to keep going, because the truth is, if you want to go from that open road to having and accepting the fact that you'll have these tumbleweeds, you will eventually go to a place where there is a lot of traffic. Traffic is typically a bad thing, but in this world of content, you want traffic. You want people to be paying attention to it. You want people to be coming back for it. You want people to be asking about it. And if you do, you'll go to a point where you have that long tails of content, that your content lasts and lasts, that it's evergreen, that there's value, and that people continue to come to it. So I'm going to throw it quickly back to Jess, and happy to take your conversation. Well, happy to have a conversation, but I'll happy to also take your questions and chat about everything and anything related to content, influencers, building your brand. I'm happy to be here. Jess, thank you so much for this opportunity, and hopefully this was of value to you and all the business owners who are listening today.
Thank you, Mitch. Thank you to our attendees. It looks like at this time we don't have any questions, but
Were we
I
on?
will
Was it
just
working?
absolutely just going to give it a minute. Oh, we have some coming through now. People were gathering their
All right.
thoughts.
Well,
So,
I
Mitch, do you
actually
have any thoughts?
I private chatted them and told them I'm going to pay $100 per question. So that's why we have questions now, Jess.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So our first question is, do you have any thoughts on affiliate programs?
Yeah, I do. I was there in the early days of affiliate marketing. And so I've watched this go from really small and really niche to being extremely powerful and profound. Affiliate marketing has become extremely sophisticated. And if you feel like there is somebody who has an audience that can better help get your product or service into it, and there is that referral fee, and that fee is worth it, you're understanding what not just the cost of acquisition is, but the lifetime value of that customer. I believe that affiliate marketing can still be very, very powerful. The problem is, like any of this stuff, one is your mileage may vary, but two is you have to really make sure you're working with a reputable firm, that there is a reputable list, because I've seen all too often people get hammered on the fact that your affiliate marketer was spamming people or was using a non-hygienic list or was advertising in questionable ways. Always understand at the end of the day that the relationship they have will be with your brand. Your brand name will be on it, your business will be on it, your name may even be on it. So I'm a big fan of affiliates when there is a real sense of transparency and understanding between you, who the affiliate is, and how they communicate. So don't just dig into what they can do for you. Try to have a real understanding of who they're communicating with and how they do it. And you have to do a gut check. A gut check. You have to be really comfortable with a bit of the uncertainty that comes with this. And by the way, sometimes they'll do things that you think I would never do that, but it actually does work and it's ethical. I mean, be sure that it's ethical. I spent years working in the Canadian Marketing Association. I was chairperson for the board of directors, and we did a lot of work with the privacy commissioner. We do a lot of work with ethics and government, and I'm very big on making sure that you are doing the right thing. Be a good steward, be a good citizen within the organization or your community.
All right, Mitch, we have a question from Natalie. She'd like to know, how do you get the team motivated to follow the strategy you propose?
Well, hey, Natalie, great to have you here, and thanks for the question. If there is a question of motivation, the real question is, are we doing the right thing? Content by its very nature isn't advertising and should have an air of fascination, fun, excitement. There doesn't, if people say to me, how do you come up with an idea and how do you, I have too many ideas. I just don't have enough time in the day to create those ideas. And so it does require sitting down with the team and understanding what isn't exciting. And if it's not exciting, why? And the answer might lie in the format. It might lie in the fact that the person who you're relying on is sick of writing and they're not writers. Maybe it's time to shoot some videos. Maybe it's time to record some podcasts. Maybe it's time to think about it differently. So knowing who the content creators are and knowing how they're doing it is helpful. And then I would think mixing it up. Try to introduce a sense of surprise and delight. Don't go too far from your triangle of attention or the bullseye within it, but think really strategically about what can I do that would really be different here. So quick example, Clubhouse is this new app that allows you to hop on it. It's basically like talk radio with everybody in there. For those of you who are old enough, there was the party line when we were younger. It's that. And I do a weekly podcast. So it would be easy to just record my podcast, do my thing, and then go on to Clubhouse and start a conversation about content marketing. But what I decided to do is to take my next guest, record it live in Clubhouse, which is its own unique challenges, but then also do a live Q&A, which now it's different. It's almost like I rented a theater and I'm recording my podcast live in front of a studio audience. Only this is just audio and it's online. So I try to mix it up by adding in either new components or technologies, new ways to tell the story in different ways. So that would be some of the ways I would try to motivate my team. Also, it's on you a little bit. If you're not motivated and excited, guys, we got to get this thing out. It's going to be more challenging for sure.
All right. We have a question from Allison. Mitch, she wants to know, what are the benefits slash uses for Medium?
Okay, so first of all, thanks, Allison. Medium is a very popular destination for people who want to read content from smart people. So you do not want to be shilling in there. You really want to be adding value. Adding value means that when I write something, the reader is getting more value out of it than I am. That's how that value exchange actually works. It's not about me, it's about you. And I want the content to be relevant to you. So the benefit of Medium for me is it's attacking a very different type of audience. It may be one that isn't subscribed to me or coming to my profile. It may be people that I'm not connected to in LinkedIn or Facebook. So it's a completely different audience. The other thing about Medium that's really fascinating is there are publications within Medium or there are publications that are based on Medium. And if these editors or publishers within Medium see articles and they're usually tagging pieces of content that they like, what they'll do is they will ask you if you'd like to submit it to their magazine. So suddenly it's not that people have to follow me on Medium or the article that they see in some aggregation, but if I'm part of this magazine, they have their own list. They're notifying that there's this article. So to me, it is a very healthy and opportunistic distribution strategy but you have to make sure that your content falls within the purview of the type of reader that is on Medium. It's pretty vast and pretty deep. You'd be surprised. There's probably not topics that haven't been talked about, but you do want to be careful and make sure that there's value to the audience. But for me, Medium is a great place, especially if you're writing articles, to be.
Okay, and we have a few questions that kind of circle back on this theme, but when you post something on multiple platforms, do you post the content on all the platforms on the same day or do you space them out?
It's a great question. I like to do the same day, but I have no issue with spacing them out. In fact, I think spacing them out may be a more interesting strategy because if you space them out really strategically, it's almost like you're filling up a week. But remember that optically to you, you're filling out the week like Monday here, Wednesday here, Thursday there. But to the people who are in it, they're only seeing the article from Monday, maybe on Thursday, because that's when you published it there. So you have to make the call on when to do it. But if you do it like that, in theory, you could have four pieces of content that stretch out over longer periods of time than if they just dropped one after the other in a week or multiple weeks. I will say that the half-life of content has really changed. It used to be, back in the early 2000s, you could write a blog post and a month later someone would discover it and it would become the viral thing. Now you can put up a blog post, get a bunch of likes, followers, people commenting, and the next day they're on to the next thing. So the half-life has really shrunk too. So the strategy of holding it and picking and choosing where to go is very strategic. And there's a lot of work that's been published around when's the best day, what's the best time. And again, people would argue, what are you publishing on a Saturday for? What are you publishing on a Sunday for? I like reading content or listening to content on Sunday. Sunday morning is this weird New York Timesy type of moment for me. So I'm catering it to someone like me. It's not necessarily the right way, but that's how I think about it. But I like both strategies. I think they're both good. Test them.
All right, and our final question. Mitch, do you have any thoughts on writing when you are a singular business owner running the business? What's the best way to get that content? And what do you think of programs that rewrite content?
So I don't have any thoughts on programs that rewrite content. I'm not sure I understand what that means. If you want to clarify that, you can, and we can come back to it if there's time. Um, I understand being busy more than anyone. My life was not always this. In fact, the story that I like to tell people is that when I published or wrote my first book, 6 Pixels of Separation, I was still blogging every day. So I've got a deadline for the book. I'm still blogging every day, sticking to my regime. I'm still growing this agency, which is a new and vulnerable small business. And my wife was pregnant with our first. And I remember she's in labor and we're waiting, and I'm with my laptop trying to finish the book. So I understand what it's like to feel overwhelmed. That being said, it's lifestyle choice. I really like writing. I like writing more than I like watching Netflix or Amazon Prime. So writing for me isn't laborious. It's actually it's that exhaust valve. It's my chance to sit down and really let out some of the things I saw during the day that I think might be important. And that's what I mean by finding that your format too and choosing your text or images or audio video. For me, it's the stuff I need to get out. So even at night, it'll be 9 o'clock, and we've got more than one kid now, and they're young. And when they go to bed, it'll be 9 o'clock at night. I'm easily happy to come in and write, or even now, I'll pop onto Clubhouse and start a room and just have conversations with people. And hopefully that inspires me. So you have to just find that inspiration. And it's the same thing as anything. Nobody has time in the day unless it's important to them. When it's important to them, they make the time in the day to do this, fully understanding how hard your life is because I was there multiple times.
All right, clarification was provided. So
Okay.
online content spinners that rewrite content for you, and they can even rewrite your own content. These are improving, not perfect, but might be helpful.
I mean, if it's editorial, if you're talking about working with people who can help make your content sound better, sound more in your voice, I'm all for that. If you're talking about people who take the content, anonymize it, and try and just spread it on all these sites, which I've seen these content farmy type stuff, I don't like that stuff. I tend to be a very ethical content creator. I try to do things in a way that is authentic, that is with my brand, that stands with my values. So as long as it fits your values and it's legal, have at it. Let me know if it works. I'd love to know.
All right. Thank you very much to our attendees and to Mitch. We're going to end the webinar now.
Bye, everyone.